Spider-Boy has the very best action toys. Top 10 show, games, and vid. Gotta love the Iraq Kid. Man, just the things that you discover were sitting in your lawn box for years and years that you could have enjoyed all that time. Iraq Kid. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the web-spinning and bizarre-naged Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan. Today we're taking a look at another Amalgam issue. This is Spider-Boy #1, and if you've been keeping up with the Vault lately, we have been going through all of the DC and Marvel crossovers from the DC versus Marvel, Marvel versus DC miniseries into the Amalgam issues, which were one-shot, besides, I think, one miniseries, one-shots that were issued by both companies together during a short period. I think they all came out in 1 week, one set in 96, one set in 97, while the two companies took off from all their other books and they just put out these crazy, strange, and often incredibly bizarre and silly, or bizarre-nage, issues that cross each of their universes. And so today we're taking a look at, of course, what is obviously a Spider-Man and Superboy crossover. This is a thing that could only have existed during the period that it was printed, and I think you had to have been reading comics right then to really appreciate this. The other books that I've talked about so far, a little bit less so, especially Amazon. I think that most of the stuff there is something that you would more or less appreciate if you just simply knew something about Storm and Wonder Woman. The Dark Claw one, a little bit more so, kind of a 90s thing. Both of all of this very 90s in tone and in style, but this very much all about the mythology going on at that time with both of these characters, and importantly, this is another clone, because he is a blend of two clones. So, and I think that's kind of a cool idea. So, we have Superboy, who, right after Death of Superman, during Reign of Superman, Reign of the Superman, was a clone of Superman, and then he is merged not with Peter Parker Spider-Man, but with Ben Reilly, who, right around this time, was still going around as Spider-Man and not Scarlet Spider, I think. And so this is very much a blend of both of them in the style of the narrative, in how the panels are laid out, in the way the story is told, the fact that there are a lot of thought balloons, etc., etc. There were thought balloons, I think, in Superman comics in the early 90s too, but this reads very much like an early Stan Lee Spider-Man comic with, very much a 90s tone, but just with just the way the writing is handled. And then the character himself, the story itself, I think, is much more of a Spider-Man type story, especially in a lot of the stuff with the origin, but it's very much a blend of both of these characters. I don't know where one starts and one ends, and I kind of like that about it, but this is much more so than the other two I've talked about so far. Like I said, very mythology heavy, and the fun here is in looking at just all of the references. It's just chock full of references. So incredibly dense with that stuff, and it gets a little bit overwhelming even if you're in the know, I think. I almost want to start making graphs and things to keep track of all of it. On the very first page, Bizarrenage, which is a bizarre idea in and of itself. You take Bizarro and Carnage, and you put them together, even though neither of them in this universe, as far as I can tell, existed before. So I don't know how that name would have even happened. You've got something that is both bizarre and creates a lot of carnage. I don't want to overthink it, but it's a really strange thing to imagine a name would come together like that. And then we have to go off and turn it into a verb, where the Bizarro Carnage, of course, speaking in in very bizarro speech, saying the opposite of what he means to say, and speaking with horrendous grammar. He says he's going to bizarro-nidge someone, and it's absolutely nuts. Anyway, really any major scientist that shows up in Spider-Man or Superman comics seems to exist at Cadmus Labs. That's kind of a running joke here. You have most of the Fantastic Four, maybe all the Fantastic Four, I forgot, I think... let me think. Are they all there? I think they're actually all there. And then you have Hank Pym, and you have the Atom, you have Ray Palmer, they're both there, one of them, of course, wanting to make things very small, the other very big, and it's just like it is a who's who of scientists in DC and Marvel, and you've got Dr. Octopus there working with Spider-Boy as opposed to being a villain for him. There's this really obvious gag where Spider-Boy says, man, my life would be less complicated if you were a villain, if you were one of my arch nemesis. I wish that were the case. This is a thing that is in no way whatsoever meant to be taken seriously, and both Amazon and Dark Claw, I thought, had really, would have, if you'd kept going with them, would have certainly had some potential for good drama. This seems to be very parody territory, and I certainly enjoyed it for that. And of course there are those elements, especially in Dark Claw, but with this, I didn't really buy anything. It just felt like a lot of really fun, silly, blend everything together. Like the background is just absolutely ridiculous. He's a clone of Peter Parker, and while he's being created in the lab, he's a clone accidentally of someone who Peter Parker bitten by a spider, so he has spider powers, and he thinks of General Ross, who is there in the lab, as his uncle, like Uncle Ben, and he calls him Uncle Jen, which is an absolute groaner, but hilarious. And he gives him the "with great power comes a great responsibility" speech, which doesn't play the same way it does for Peter Parker, and it doesn't have that emotional resonance or that poignancy because he kind of learns it after the fact and very superficially. So his uncle is just murdered by a burglar or multiple burglars, I forget, like sort of with the regular Spider-Man origin, except it's not really this guy's fault. He doesn't blame himself for it at all. He just puts on a costume after that and decides to be a superhero. It's real simple and real superficial, and he says, so he basically just comes out and says, I learned this. We don't really see him have to you learn the hard lesson on his own. It's just he's told that, and then I guess sort of off panel he sort of learns it, and he says, but it also comes with a lot of fun, and this is a Spider-Man / Superboy who really enjoys what he does. That's fun, certainly, but like I said, there's not really any real drama to this, and even though you know, in any real pathos, even though it's just one issue and it pretends to be part of a grander whole, the other two of these that I've read had more of that, and I was a little bit surprised by that. But like I said, just as a really silly comedy that is sort of playing itself straight, I kind of enjoyed it. It's hard not to just look at this and want to go through all the silly names and blends of things and stuff. I should mention that, first of all, with some of that it mixes, or I should say sets up and talks about a lot of other characters in books, more so than the others that I've looked at so far. So Amazon is mentioned, and as Amazon, even though in that issue she calls herself Wonder Woman, but Challengers of the Fantastic comes up because you have the whole Fantastic Four. Here you have Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's brought up because Sue Storm in this is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and I think that's absolutely hilarious, considering that one of the Fantastic Four right now, I think, is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent since we've disbanded the Fantastic Four. I can't remember if it's... I should have looked that up. I can't remember if it's Susan Storm or Reed Richards, but somebody's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Marvel Comics right now. I haven't read anything that character's been in since we relaunched Marvel. But I think that's funny that sort of came true later on, and so that's kind of interesting that I'm starting to see this world kind of expand and become more complex and interwoven, even though we have even though it's all in just these one-shots that don't continue. It has the thing that the others have had so far, where it plays as a number one and gives you that background origin, and yet some of the references are to other books and other numbers, and at first I thought we were looking at references to the same book, but there's a joke in the letters page, and I'll read that letter because I thought it was funny, that's talking about how there are too many Spider-Boy books. Very much the complaint that some folks might have given both the Spider-Man titles and the Superman titles at this time, where it's just overbloated, maybe to some people, bloated, overblown, too many of them, and asking readers to spend too much money to buy all the books of a character that are all crossing over together. That letter is, and again, remember that with these, this is the editors themselves writing these letters, pretending to be readers, doing these kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek, often really obvious, but still kind of enjoyable, fake letters. Dear Spider Guys, not to be a pain or anything, but don't you think you're maybe putting out too many books? The imminent arrival of the new adjectiveless Spider-Boy, I love making fun of that title, brings the Iraq Kids total to a whopping 4. Couldn't we have said Arachnakid? Like, didn't that roll off the tongue a little bit better? How can you seriously expect me to be able to afford, in addition to way cool Spider-Boy, outrageous Spider-Boy, and awesome Spider-Boy, I have to eat too, you know? And if we came back and did Spider-Boy now, I'm sure we would also have the superior Spider-Boy. And I hear you're launching a whole slew of other titles this February. Bullets and Bracelets, Speed Demon, Doctor Strange Fate, the list goes on and on. While the prowess of the Amalgam talent pool is legendary, aren't you spreading yourselves a little bit thin? And that's, of course, a lot of kind of self-parody and being really self-aware in what some of the really a lot of readers were saying to both companies at the time, the way they were doing business. And again, this is really interesting because this is right around when the crash happened, and they're pointing to a lot of the things that caused that. I've been looking forward to finally seeing Dr. Doomsday, who is mentioned in this. He's of course Dr. Doom and Doomsday, because you gotta do that. And this is just so outlandish and over the top, and he's mentioned, and I'm kind of excited to finally see him later on. The other villain in this is King Lizard, which is really strange. At first I thought, surely that's not a blend of King Shark and the Lizard, and that's indeed exactly what it is. I looked that up, and I was like, okay, well, the only thing that makes it King Shark is that it's big. I mean, he's not a shark, he's a lizard guy, and I think he's also Fin Fang Foom. I did a little bit of research, and everything I saw said that he was just a blend. Somebody help me out. Said he was just a blend of King Shark and Lizard, but Fin Fang Foom is even, that name is even mentioned. So I don't know if he just kind of looks like that, and so somebody says that, but I think he's also Fin Fang Foom. Something else I really enjoyed about this, and like I said, it's fun just on a goofy parody level, is all the way through this, and I thought this is set up well. We're doing the classic Mary Jane, he's gonna go on a blind date, and he doesn't really want to, and he doesn't know if he's gonna like this girl or anything, and at the end it is Mary Jane, but she is a superhero in her own right, and she's called the Insect Queen, and right at the very end, the very last panel is, "Face it, Spider, you just hit the jackpot," and I really enjoyed that. A little obvious? Yeah, sure, but it was funny. I like Spider-Boy's costume. Again, it's a cool, fun, kind of obvious blend, I guess, of those two suits. But it's neat to see the Spider-Man mask realized as a domino mask, and it's just goofy in all the right ways. It's got the silly pants and the jacket from the Superboy suit, but it's also a spandex thing. I guess the pants were spandexy, but with the Superboy suit, but it didn't go all the way up, so it's goofy because you have a jacket on top of, you have a leather jacket on top of a spandex suit, and it's just two things that don't go together, and the juxtaposition is kind of hilarious to me. So that's fun. And what else? He's Pete Ross in this, but so I guess he is technically a blend of three characters, but it seems like that's a blend just with the name. I don't think Pete Ross himself is actually really in there. But yeah, a lot of where I get off saying that I don't really know where you would go from here. Like the other two books I've talked about so far, I would have been really excited to read more of, and this I think is actually realized better as a one-shot than those in some ways. And partly just because, and so I guess this is a praise and a criticism, partly because I can't imagine reading more of this because this guy has just too good of a life. Like, nothing seems to really go wrong for him. It seems like the whole world coalesces to his will. He seems to almost know he's in a comic book, but not in a fourth wall breaking kind of way. He just always knows he's going to win. He's not really worried about anything. He, of course, doesn't have that in common with Peter Parker at all. He's got that same early Peter Parker super cockiness, and he is very he's very conceited and full of himself, but he never has to pay for that. He has his token, obvious, tragic backstory, but beyond that, it's Spider-Boy's world and you're just living in it. And turning a lot of the Spider-Man stuff on its head means that this guy catches every break, unlike Peter Parker, who catches no break. And so we use the "with great power comes great responsibility" line, but the message isn't there, of course, because he doesn't ever have to really pay for anything. The point with Peter Parker is that even when you do the right thing, sometimes there are unfortunate, awful consequences, and at the end of the day, you have to do what you think is right, as opposed to just what you think will bring the outcome that you most want. And this guy, the Daily Bugle loves him. It becomes a tabloid that's all about trying to guess at his. You're becoming paparazzi as opposed to trying to make everybody hate him. Trying to guess who he's going to date next, or that kind of thing. And then his worst enemy is in this his best friend, and the list goes on. But like I said, it was a really fun read. I think in a lot of ways this is my favorite of them, just because it has so much fun with the really crazy, silly blends of things, and that's kind of what I come to this for. So yeah, I mean, its greatest asset is also its greatest weakness for me, which is I was impressed with the other two that I've read so far, wanting to read on. But this is, in a lot of ways, this is kind of the most fun of them, and I don't really need any more, which is ironic because the next year when they did more Amalgam stuff, we got the Spider-Boy team up. So it'll be interesting to see what that's like later on. I should also mention one thing I really liked about this. This is neither here nor there. Is another thing where the world is coalescing to him is I sing that silly song at the beginning that is in the book, and I would not have made up those lyrics, where it mentions that he has toys, and he's very merchandised in this, and again, the whole world loves him. And he says something early on about how when he grows up, when he gets older, Spider-Boy will become Spider-Man, and he's excited to continue to merchandise himself up to that point. And I thought it was kind of fun that we have a version of Spider-Man in this who isn't based on anything as far as he knows. So with Superboy, Superboy hated being called Superboy and always wanted to be called Superman, and this is kind of fun and turns that on its head because it's much more the Superboy of old that would have lived in Smallville and would eventually grow up and become Superman. So this is a Spider-Boy who thinks that someday he'll be Spider-Man. I thought that was kind of fun. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, sure appreciate it, and I'll have more Amalgam before we get tomorrow. If you've ever read this, leave a comment and let me know what you thought of it, and let me know. I've been getting a lot of great comments. I really appreciate it from people giving me some historical context that I don't have, and a couple people that really know their Amalgam, and of course I'm just getting my feet wet in it because growing up I read a couple of these, and I read DC versus Marvel over and over, but so I remember it, but I haven't read anything like all of it, so I really appreciate all the information that people have been giving me and letting me know what some of the crossovers are that I didn't know about and all of that. So I'm sure there's more info that people have about this that I don't have. Looking forward to reading it, and in the meantime, I am Captain Logan, and happy reading.